Welcome to People Power, Citizen Scientists and the Smithsonian. Thank you for joining us. Live real-time captioning and American Sign Language interpretation are available during today's live program. To view the simulcast that includes these services, please use the link provided in the comments section. If you are viewing this program after the live broadcast, please note that it will also be made available on our website with closed captioning. My name is Allison Kaywood. Today, we invite you to participate in a conversation about the ways that volunteers contribute to Smithsonian research and conservation efforts. We'll be taking your comments in the live chat, so please participate. This program is supported by the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, partnered with the Smithsonian Conservation Commons Earth Optimism Initiative. If you don't know the festival, I encourage you to check out festival.si.edu to learn about our programs, education resources, and more. Before we introduce our guests, I'd like to show you a brief video to introduce you to the concept of citizen science.
When many people think about what science looks like, they often picture a single researcher working in a sterile white lab. But most modern science involves teams of researchers with expertise in a wide range of disciplines. This team-based approach allows scientists to address large, complex issues like climate change and the history of the universe. But these big questions require lots of data, much more than could be generated or analyzed by a single team of researchers. Fortunately, the world is filled with curious people who are passionate about understanding and protecting the world around them. Increasingly, more and more of those people are becoming citizen scientists by volunteering to help with real research projects. Through citizen science, they become partners in discovery, making valuable contributions to science around the world. Citizen scientists can range from elementary school students to retirees. Some have extensive scientific backgrounds, while others are just beginning to explore. Volunteer activities, like submitting a photograph, can take a few minutes, or can be something that volunteers participate in regularly for years. Citizen science projects can be on any topic, from exploring biodiversity in your neighborhood to classifying the shapes of galaxies. Collectively, these efforts increase the amount and kinds of research that we can do. Regardless of the form that it takes, citizen science expands the ways that we can do science, extends the impacts of research, and broadens notions about who can and should be involved in science. It provides a way for researchers to answer big questions, for volunteers to help with research that they care about, and for scientists and communities to work together. If you are interested in the world around you and want to help, you too can become a citizen scientist. There are ways for everyone to play a role in increasing our understanding of the forces that shape our world. We hope that you'll join us.
Now I'd like to welcome our guests. Dr. Bill McShay is a wildlife ecologist at the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute. Johnny Stutzman is a soon-to-be started graduate student, and he's a former intern at the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute. Dr. Rich Barclay is a paleobotanist at the National Museum of Natural History. And Linda Davidson is a volunteer with the Fossil Atmospheres Project. Thank you all for being here today. I'd like to start by asking Bill to give us a brief introduction to the eMammal Project.
Thank you, Allison. And I apologize that my connection is so poor here and I'm all jiggly, but hopefully my voice comes through fine for the listeners. So if we can start putting up the slides, we can talk about the eMammal Project. This is a jaguar. The picture was taken in Costa Rica. It's walking through the forest, nice tropical forest. This is how I make my living, looking for things like this. People say, "Oh, so exciting," but you never actually see the jaguar. I spent decades looking at jaguar feces and jaguar tracks without ever actually seeing a jaguar. And you spend a lot of your time guessing over whose feces are these, and are these the same tracks that you saw yesterday, or there are different tracks. It was relatively confusing and relatively qualitative as opposed to quantitative. But then came along a new technological advance, the advent of these cam tracks or trail cameras. These really standardized how we can look for a lot of mammals. We're looking at a camera that's about the size of a shoebox, and it's attached to a tree, and it's really a camera unit attached to a sensor that looks for hot objects moving in front of the camera. And then that's the sensor sends a signal to the camera, and the infrared flash assists with a picture if it's during the night. These cameras have revolutionized what we do, and it really makes it, we no longer are looking for feces so much. We can stick these out in the woods and they work 24/7, and they do a great job. And I've spent a lot of my life training people in Burma or China or Borneo on how to use the cameras and how to set up the cameras and how to collect the data. And I started to think, if I can do this to a group in Borneo who have a 6th grade education and have never seen a camera before, I should take advantage of the citizen scientists in the US. I should take advantage of the core of people who are relatively trained to begin with, who know their way about the forest. And if I can utilize them, I can move my science to a much larger landscape scale, and I can look at mammals across the landscape. So I really made a hard effort to engage citizen scientists in the science that I was trying to do, the survey of mammals. And for that, we developed something called eMammal. It has a great logo. We want to show you the logo here. It's based at the Smithsonian. It's a data pipeline to move data from the field and the citizen science through the scientists into a repository and then out to the public. And I have a flow diagram that may look complicated, but it's really not so complicated. The flow diagram starts at the bottom with a group of people. Those people are given camera traps, which is also down there at the bottom, and they have a desktop application. So they go out, put out their camera, take back their SD card to the house, plug it into their desktop app. It moves up to the cloud. In the cloud, it gets looked at by a Smithsonian staff person or a graduate student to verify the identification. Then it goes into a repository up at the top there, and then it comes down at the eMammal website. And once it gets to the website, the citizen scientists, if you're a member of the project, you can see all the data that's being collected. There's no 3-year lag while you wait for the publication. You can use and work with your data that you collected and the other citizen scientists on your project pretty much in real time. And that, I think, is a big boon to getting people involved and getting people engaged and it gives them the feedback that helps them along. Since we've developed that program, we've been able to move to much larger landscapes. We did an urban to wild project here in this area where we went from Washington, D.C. up into the mountains of West Virginia. We did a project on the Appalachian Trail from North Carolina up into Pennsylvania. We've done a number of projects that a colleague of mine in North Carolina has done. Every county in North Carolina has done citizen science, and the cameras are actually sitting in the library, and you go into the library and check them out, and you do parts in your county, and then you put the camera back in the library for the next person. And those kind of projects are things that people like me could never have done before, me and my staff. It really broadens our ability to do things and to see mammals across the whole range that they exist. I don't know if I have any other slides there, or is that the last of the?
I think that's all of them.
All right, well, that's good enough.
Great.
Yeah, I think that gives you an idea of what we're what we're about with the eMammal.
Yeah, I love the connection with the libraries. That was such a cool thing. Rich, will you tell us a little bit about fossil atmospheres?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm coming to you from my living room in Washington, D.C. So it's nice to have all of you here, and thanks for attending. My citizen science projects are a little different than Bill's. His are much longer in terms of their development, and mine are a little more towards the lab base. But if we can bring the images up, I'll show you what we're doing with the material. So what you're looking at is specimens of ginkgo. This is ginkgo biloba. The green leaf you see there is a fresh modern leaf that we took from our experiment. And then you'll know that ginkgo leaves also turn yellow in the fall. They create this nice, beautiful canopy, and they all fall kind of on the same day. So they're distributed all across the United States and around the world. They used to be, they used to live in North America as fossils. So the fossil you're seeing on the rock in the middle there, hopefully you can identify the fossil on the rock. It looks exactly like the modern ginkgo leaf. And so that's an extinct version. It's 56 million years old. But what's great about it is that it is almost exactly the same, even though it's 56 million years old, it's almost exactly the same as a fresh modern ginkgo leaf. And so that's something that I really need. I'm a paleobotanist. I'm really interested in climate, reconstructing climate, things like temperature, in particular, carbon dioxide concentration. And if we can go to the next slide there, what you see is yet another ginkgo. This one's an extinct species, Ginkgo wyomingensis. So the name suggests it comes from Wyoming, and that's true. This one's also 56 million years old. The previous image of the fossil was just an imprint, and that's not really fair to that fossil being 56 million years old and still looking like a ginkgo. But the one you see in front of you, even though it's kind of torn over on the right side, you can still see the veins, and it has that lovely, that lovely fan shape form that you're all probably very familiar with. This is the leaf itself. So it's 56 million years old, and it has preserved, when you look at it under a microscope, it has every cell preserved on that leaf. It's the leaf itself. I can pick it up, I can wave it around. It is the leaf. And so we can look at the details of that leaf, and we can reconstruct carbon dioxide concentration from that leaf. So something just as simple as a ginkgo leaf can tell us what the climate was like, the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere 56 million years ago. And the reason that I'm really interested in paleoclimate is that it really is a fundamental component of a landscape. If you go on vacation, a lot of us want to go and sit on a nice warm beach where it's sunny, it's warm, it's humid. That's all the types of climate features we're interested in. So we can use this ginkgo leaf to get that information. If we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so now you're looking at an image, a modern day image of the Smithsonian's Environmental Research Center. This is the Fossil Atmospheres experiment, part of the Fossil Atmospheres project. That's one component where we're using ginkgo leaves like you see there right in the center of the screen, as well as inside that kind of lit up chamber that's on the right side of the screen. There's a ginkgo tree inside of those. We have 12 chambers and 3 trees that are growing outdoors, and we're growing them under elevated carbon dioxide concentration. And what we can do is we can use that information. We can see how ginkgo, modern ginkgo, that looks just like the fossils, responds to elevated carbon dioxide concentrations. We can apply that knowledge from the modern ginkgos in these experiments to the fossils that we collect in that, what we saw in that second slide. We can collect the same exact data, and we can use our understanding of how ginkgo responds to CO2 to reconstruct carbon dioxide 56 million years ago. So that's what the Fossil Atmospheres project is all about. And what we've been doing is utilizing the Zooniverse citizen science website. And we'll have a listing for that where you can access and collect the data that we're producing for the project itself. So you can go, the great thing about citizen science projects in this case, one that's online from anywhere in the world. You can go online, collect data for the project, and we get to use that. And it pushes science forward, and it allows us to understand climate change that occurred in the geological past, really deep time, as well as understanding what we can expect from modern day climate change.
Thank you, Rich. Johnny, can you tell us a little bit about the ways that you've been involved with the eMammal project?
Yeah, so I originally started with Bill as an intern by way of, applying for other jobs. I got passed along to Bill, and a lot of what I was doing is organizing and working with the citizen scientists that help us on these projects. And so we help train people in our protocols, and we help them learn how to use the eMammal software. And occasionally, if they really needed it, I'd help them go finish up putting out cameras in Shenandoah or West Virginia or wherever.
Thank you. And Linda, can you tell us a little bit about the ways that you're involved with the Fossil Atmospheres Project?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Actually, one of the great things about the Fossil Atmosphere program is the variety of different things that we do there. To begin with, there are several places where different parts of the project are done, including at the museum and in the research lab at CERC. I primarily work in the field with the trees, which is where I'd rather be. So we do everything from adjusting the CO2 levels, making sure that they're where they need to be in each of those chambers, because that becomes really important information. And we also collect data, things like leaf temperatures and soil moisture on a daily basis, basically. When we have enough volunteers, we each have kind of adopted one of the trees. And so we're kind of responsible to keep the weeds down as low as we can, and to kind of think about the whole area around our tree. There's eventually, I think, plans to automate a lot of these data collection things that we may be doing by hand, although I have to admit I haven't been there for a year, as most people haven't been out at CERC for a year. So I'm not sure how far that's gotten, but once there's more automation of data collection, then the science, doing the science is something, if you're interested as a volunteer, I find that Rich and the interns and I are very willing to teach you, and so that it's just an amazing amount of things that you can do with this project. And I'm interested because I'm also quite concerned about the climate and want to know as much as I can.
Yeah, Linda, I was going to ask, because you are not a scientist by training.
No.
So why did you want to get started in being involved in research?
Well, I've always been interested in at the outdoors and all kinds of, science things. I didn't even know about CERC for a number of years after I moved here. So I was like overjoyed when I, through a different project, which I didn't end up doing, ended up out at CERC and went, oh my gosh, look what's going on out here. I was said if I lived closer, I'd live in the Silver Spring, Maryland. So it's just an amazing place with so much going on that if you're interested at all, there's something for you there.
Yeah, so Linda's talking about CERC. That's the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, which is out in Edgewater, Maryland, and that's where the ginkgo trees live. Johnny, can you tell us, why did you get started with the eMammal project? How did that, what motivated you to be part of it? And what do you like about being part of it?
Well, one of the things I really like about being part of eMammal is the collectiveness of it all. It's data from everywhere. It all gets collected in one spot, and it allows for involvement by as many people as we want. So it's a really good way to foster connections between people and just get as much data as we can, other than what we'd be able to get by ourselves. We get pictures like the cute little black bear cub here romping through somewhere in Virginia. And yeah, I think it's just a great way to get as much information as we can in one collective space.
So Bill, like you've run lots of projects in your career as a researcher. What's different about a citizen science project and running a citizen science project from those other ones?
I think one is the scale that you can. When I did my master's, it was on 1 hectare of woods and how the mice, where they went and what they did in that 1 hectare. And now you can look across a state or an ecoregion by engaging the outside world. And I've also, I started as an ecologist, but I'm now more of a conservationist, in that I'm worried about the world. I'm worried about the state of our wildlife and our natural resources. And I think we have to get people engaged in what's going on out there. And there's no better way than giving someone a camera and saying, go walk to this place in the woods and tell me what you see. And they come back and they've done what you wanted with the camera, but their connection with nature during the walk, I think, is very important. And I think I get as much out of that citizen involvement as I get out of the data that's being collected. So that's really the difference. And the other part is sometimes with the interns, you're ordering them around and telling them what to do when they don't really, you're not so nice to them. But with the citizen scientists, you have to keep them informed all the way. They have to know what they're doing, why they're doing it, what the results are, how the results are going to be used. All of that makes me a better scientist. It stands me up and tells me I've got to pay attention to these things, that I've got to bring everybody along with me rather than just go someplace by myself. It doesn't help if I believe in conservation. I need everybody else to believe in it too.
Yeah, I love working with volunteers for a lot of what you're saying. Not only are they like smart, curious people, but they only show up when they want to. So when they're there, they're excited and they are just fantastic. So Rich, do you have anything to add about what's different about running a citizen science project from a more traditional research project?
Yeah, in a way, I'm kind of doing a hybrid of both. It may not be obvious to the audience, but to run a museum and to run an environmental research center really requires volunteers and citizen scientists who can come to the site. And so, like Bill, I've also incorporated a lot of sort of human power in person. But so that's kind of more the traditional way. Working in a museum and doing a research project involves lots of people coming to help out. And like everyone was saying, volunteers, in-person citizen scientists are amazing, and we can't do what we do without them. I just kind of wanted to stretch things a little bit further in that I think one of the things that we can do better is to include the rest of the population in science. It doesn't have to be just scientists and other people. Including them in science will kind of help with the gap we have in science literacy. And I think these citizen science projects, if you go over to the zooniverse.org citizen science site, you can work on everything from counting galaxies to imaging cells. I mean, all kinds of every topic under the sun and beyond is available to study there. So I think that kind of access to a lot of people working on their own computers, helping out scientists, I think does everyone good. And so I think we need to figure out how to incorporate these into our science, our actual research projects. And so I would say going forward, I think they need to be both really at the same time. And I think like Bill was saying, you raise everybody up, you improve the science that I'm doing, and you bring a lot of people along with you, and they become ambassadors and talk to their everyone they know, and it just educates everyone. So yeah, that's my philosophy for that.
Yeah. So Linda, can you tell us something that you have learned? Like, can you tell us some of the things that you've learned while you've been working at it, Fossil Atmospheres? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know that you don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to give a shout out to the scientists, to the staff, to the interns that I've worked with on several projects. I mean, they're amazing. They answer everything. They really try to help you to understand and know what you're doing, and always have time for that for you. We also had, with Fossil Atmospheres, we also have these mini symposiums occasionally where we learn about the science background behind the project, but also the data that's being collected and how it's being used at this point, how far it's gotten, which motivated me then to go to some of the scientific articles that have been written around this subject. And then I thought, gee, I don't understand a lot of this because I don't remember the chemistry. And so that involved going back to class for chemistry. So for me, this whole thing has kind of just been a rolling, learning experience. So that, without putting me on the spot to ask me exactly for facts, then I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. And Johnny, when we talked earlier, you've kind of mentioned that this has changed some things about how you're thinking about your career going into research and how you're thinking about how you might do that. Can you talk a little bit about that, about how this has changed the way you think about research and where you fit in that?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally you think about science as kind of either what Rich or Bill do by themselves, like a lab experiment or going out and looking for poop in the woods or something like that, but being part of eMammal and citizen science work has really helped to, broaden my perception of what, a big science project can be. And one of the things I'd like to do going forward, and I'm planning on doing going forward, is really trying to incorporate not only like volunteers that are actively seeking to help with my research, but maybe seeking out other people that might not have been drawn to that right away, and trying to expand the influence of the research and trying to get other people and stakeholders on board, because if the more people we get on board with our research, the better it can inform conservation decisions in the future.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, we're coming up on Earth Day tomorrow, and I think thinking about that and how we can all do that better is super important. So Bill, can you talk a little bit about some of the science results, some of the things you've learned through eMammal?
Well, there have been a number of different projects over the years, and I think, like, for example, the Urban to Wild project, we were looking at what is the impact of human activity, human infrastructure, human changes to the landscape on the mammal communities that we have around here. And we've lost a number of mammals, but we've also gained a number of mammals, all these feral cats, the squirrels in some areas. So we just, the movement of feral hogs up from the south, the mammal community is changing over time, and it really takes looking across that gradient from totally urban downtown DC to out here into the country. One of the projects, one of the results was we looked at coyotes and feral cats, and there's so many people that hate coyotes, but wherever we found coyotes, we did not find any feral cats. I don't want to say why that was happening, but they end up being good police of the forest. They keep out what they consider competitors. So we've had a number of projects like that where we find out something we weren't quite expecting, when we went into it. I would also mention that in addition to eMammal, we've had some other citizen science projects. We started one in the area that is called Virginia Working Landscapes, that really uses volunteer teams to go onto people's property to survey for birds, plants, and mammals. So we use our citizen science teams to, a landowner would come to us and say, I'm really interested in the birds that might be on my property. We have a citizen science team that we can send there to give them a report on their birds. And that turns out to be a win-win for everybody. We get data most of the world is privately owned, not publicly owned like the Shenandoah Park. It's most of private landowner holdings, and access to those lands is difficult. So by giving them something they want to know, we get information that we need to know, and the citizen scientists get to go to some really neat places and see birds and plants that they wouldn't normally see. So there's a lot of, it's a cliche to say win-win situation, but that's why it all works, because we're all getting what we need out of this situation.
And Rich, I know Fossil Atmospheres is a newer project, but can you talk about any of the science results or trends or things that you're seeing so far?
Yeah. Sometimes ginkgos don't like really elevated CO2 concentrations, so it can be kind of a difficult place to live. What we find is that ginkgo trees or have a higher photosynthetic rate, so they can incorporate more carbon and grow faster, which is a good thing to a certain degree. It's taken up a lot of the plants have taken up a lot of the CO2 that's been put into the atmosphere over the last 200 years. So that's a benefit, that higher rate of photosynthesis. But the nutritional value goes down. So we think of when CO2 goes up, the temperature of the earth goes up. And what we find is that the nutritional value of the material that all the e-mammals are eating has a lower nutritional value. So a hot world tends to be a hungry world. And so that's something that we're going to have to mitigate against, is that we can see this in the fossil record. We can see it happening today in the experiment. And the other thing is that plants, you can think of the plants that are we grow them up to 1,000 parts per million, so 4 times what it was before the Industrial Revolution. So 4 times what natural CO2 concentration should be. And you can think of those plants as kind of like race cars. They're moving really, really fast. It doesn't take much to kind of send them off track, and they can really struggle if the conditions aren't perfect. So we're headed into a world that's maybe a little more dangerous, even for plants. And then one last anecdote is that something you can observe with ginkgo trees today is that the timing at which they drop their leaves consecutively is later every year as the climate warms. So you can even use an individual tree. There's one at Yale that they've been tracking for 40 years, and they can track the timing of that leaf drop. And it just gets later and later and later as temperatures have gone up. Plants are paying attention.
Yeah, and so Bill, with eMammal, I know in one iteration of it, you all were working with school audiences. You were working with middle school students, maybe. I don't remember what age, but can you talk a little bit about how that went? Because that's a tough audience to work with, much less to get data.
It is. At one point, we had money from the Department of Defense to bring eMammal into every school in Okaloosa County, Florida. That's a county where majority military school kids in the public school system. So they had 36 schools, from grammar schools through high schools, and every school got a camera kit and they created a camera team, and they all went out and took photographs around their school, and then they essentially we made lesson plans for them, and then they competed among the schools on who got the first bear picture and who got a bobcat picture and who got the biggest alligator picture. And it was very exciting for the students because they don't know what's in their playground when they're not there. It was interesting for them to see what's lurking in the backyard. And then we end up with a great data set from Okaloosa County, Florida. It's a wonderful data set of the mammals that the schools are pretty much evenly spread across the county, and it worked out great for us. We've tried similar things in Virginia, and they've tried similar things in North Carolina. Neither of those had as much funding, so it wasn't as widespread. But it has a lot of potential because we can develop school programs for all the grade levels that hit the lesson plans, the STEM learning that they need. And they've actually set up a school system in India where the students in India are partnered with a school in North Carolina, and they trade pictures with each other of who's got the neatest mammals. So it has a lot of potential for it.
That's awesome. We're getting ready to get to audience questions. I know they're coming in. But before we do, I wanted to ask Linda and then Johnny, what's your favorite part of being a citizen scientist? What's your favorite part of being involved in these projects?
Wow. There's so many things. One is I just love being outside. So around the trees, I see many, many critters of many kinds, little ones and big ones. So just being out in the woods there, in the quiet is just a great thing. But to feel like you're participating and adding to knowledge that the scientists will use to, get us hopefully to a better place. For me, that's probably the most important thing.
How about you, John?
Yeah, I think Linda stole the words out of my mouth about being outside. It's just, what more pleasant way to work than be outside all day, Another great part is I think I have the same experience as the kids Bill was talking about in Okaloosa County, where every time I pick up a camera from the woods and open it, and I'm just really excited to see what's in there, because you never know what's going to pop up on the camera. So it's always kind of like a fun, mystery box that you're opening every time. And I sent in my favorite camera trap photo I've ever gotten on a camera I set up. And in the foreground there, you can see a bobcat with a poor little prairie dog in its mouth. And in the background, there are all his little prairie dog buddies just kind of staring with their jaws open. And, they're going to watch their backs the next time they feel the bobcat coming close to the dog town. So stuff like that. And then, being outside with bison like this guy, and avoiding snakes and trying not to step on the rattlesnakes out in Montana or anything like that. So yeah, it's just a great way to spend time, honestly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so we had a few questions that were coming in from the audience. So we had one from Maya for Rich that was wanting to know, what have you learned so far about the extinct ginkgo from Wyoming? Do you know why it went extinct?
Yeah, thanks, Maya, for the question. So ginkgo used to live in North America. It went extinct in North America, and then was brought back to North America by travelers bringing specimens back from the Far East. So if you look back 65 million years ago to back when the dinosaur extinction happened, the non-avian dinosaurs went extinct, we see a major decline in ginkgo diversity and abundance in North America and around the world. And it's really tied to the climate itself. The climate cools tremendously, and over time, just ginkgo is kind of a clunky plant. It's beautiful, but it just didn't adapt very well to the change in climate. And there was only 2 natural, so-called natural groves tended by humans really in China left today. So they've been spread around the world. So they're no longer extinct on any of the continents they used to grow on. But yeah, and then we can also use ginkgo to reconstruct CO2 where we find it in one place. And when it goes away is when it gets really hot. CO2 goes up, it gets very hot, and the plant can't live in those conditions anymore. And then when the climate changes again, they come back. So both warm and it's sort of a Goldilocks plant, I guess, in a sense. Like it really is. If it gets too hot, it goes away. If it gets too cold, it goes away. And only when those conditions return can it live in those places again.
Awesome. So there's a question for Linda. Do the skills and experiences you've gained through your work as a citizen scientist show up in other parts of your life?
Well, I think it informs many parts of my life in the sense of making me more observant just in my own backyard, just in, and as I look at things and think of it as data, is this year's garden different from last year's in some way? So I think that's how it's common. And it was a big thing for sharing with my grandkids and their friends and things like that too. So that's it.
That's awesome. So we're getting towards wrapping up, but I'd like to, especially like coming up on Earth Day, ask all 4 of you, I'll start with Bill, about the ways that you think that citizen science might help us with conservation or, kind of environmental protection going forward.
Citizen science is going to change the world. I mean, there's nothing else to say about it. We need people to get involved with the natural world, and we need to get people aware of what's going on, what's changing for the better, what's changing for the worse. We need a monitoring system, and it's not going to happen with federal employees. It's going to happen with citizens, and it's going to happen with grassroots organizations that come up with plans for what's in my backyard, what's happening to it, what am I going to do about it? The first step in any sort of action is knowledge. If you know what's going on, then you can form a plan to combat it. And said, we need people, we need the general public. And if we can take the general public along, maybe we'll actually get through to some of these policymakers who are immune to our data-driven models so far. It's going to take more than the data-driven models to get them off the stick.
How about you, Rich?
I think it's just I can agree with everything Bill just said, and just go one further, which is that I think these citizen science projects, they allow us to collect a lot more data than we could ever collect by ourselves. But I think it also creates an environment where it's sort of devoid of the controversy that goes with it. You're just delving into the science itself. You're learning, and you can kind of just tune out all the noise of what it means in terms of a policy kind of context. And so you can just focus on the science, learn about the science. And then when you get back out into the real world again, and you hear all that chatter, it sounds more like chatter, and you can kind of focus in on what is the real world explanation for what's going on. And I think citizen science projects, in-person volunteers and people working online create a wonderful environment for that to happen.
How about you, Linda?
Well, for me, I believe that we tend to protect and care for those things that we love. And by involving, especially young people, who may in fact find a path to a career, that they might not have thought about before. But certainly just being exposed to the world outside, you can't help but come to be fascinated and to love it. And I think ultimately to protect it.
And Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, everybody kind of took all the good answers already, but I was gonna say pretty much what Linda said. People aren't going to protect what they don't care about, and I think one of the great parts of citizen science is, you become really familiar with the projects you're working on, and you really care about it, and you just hope that translates into being caring and empathetic about other issues, not only in science but in the world. And I think, like Linda also said, getting kids involved in this is amazing, and the online parts of eMammal and Zooniverse and stuff like that is really great, because some kids in America have never even left like the cities that they live in. They've never been hiking before, even in DC with Rock Creek Park. And so it's really great to be able to engage kids that otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to do stuff like that. And I think that's really a valuable part of citizen science.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to add, I am interested that young people go into science or into ecology, but really there are a lot of young people already going into those subjects. What we need are bankers who love the nature. We need hedge fund owners who love ginkgo trees. We need administrators. We need the public. We don't need them to become scientists. We need them to love the natural world. And I don't need to turn everybody into a data scientist. I do need to connect everybody who has a life in another world to see our world and to see the value of that world. And that would be the great thing about citizen science.
Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences. It's been so great to hear all the things that you have to say. I also want to thank the audience for your participation and your comments, for watching and listening. I'd also like to tell you that if you have now gotten excited about citizen science, that eMammal and Fossil Atmospheres, in addition to the things that you can do in person, there are ways that you can participate in those online. There are citizen scientist projects all around the world that people can get involved in. With the brood X cicadas that are coming up, there are people collecting things for those. There have been some with the red buds that we see here in Maryland, that when the red buds come out. So wherever you are, there are projects happening close to you. So I really encourage you to get out and get involved in them. There's some really great things happening. I want to close by thanking the festival staff, interns, and fellows for their work in support of this program, including Betty Berlanis, Arlene Reiniger, Sarah Berry, Sarah Rothman, Sabrina Motley, Ruthanna Stolk, Diane Nutting, Elisa Huff, Jenny Maycock, Alex Taggart, Jason Morris, and Kate Haas. Follow the Smithsonian Folklife page here on Facebook to get notifications about future events, and find us also on Instagram and YouTube. Visit our website and come back here for our next program. Thank you all so much.